There really is no industry that's immune and hasn't been touched by drugs.
Prosecutors in Anchorage today summed up the case against him, arguing that Hazelwood gambled with the safety of his ship by drinking.
This is my career, this is my profession. I worked so hard to get everything I really wanted, you know, and all of a sudden, sometimes you lose sight of those days. Because when you don't stay clean and sober, you lose your desire to be a winner.
I showed up on a flight very drunk. I had been using cocaine for 2 days prior to the flight.
It was a lose-lose situation for the employer and the employee.
It's costing the country billions of dollars.
One accident involving drugs or alcohol could put a small company out of business.
It's an epidemic that's taking the nation by storm. No one is immune. Alcohol and drug abuse have touched the corners of the workplace and the center, from neighborhood convenience stores to the offices of elected officials, from the hospital operating room to the local auto repair shop. Hello, I'm Susan Kidd.
And I'm Peter Ford. During the next hour, you'll hear truths about business that may shock you, and you'll learn facts about the working world that may haunt you. Drug-Free Zones is a cooperative campaign of Channel 4 and Blue Cross Blue Shield of the National Capital Area. We begin with a specially produced documentary that tells firsthand the stories of some people in our community touched by the epidemic. Following that, we'll take a hard look at some of the questions and some of the answers with our guests in the studio. Whether you're in the workplace or close to someone who is, we invite you to join us tonight as we expose some of the myths and explore some models used by people confronting drugs at work.
Possibly got something in the left leg, too.
The Conrail accident, the accident near Baltimore where there was loss of life and that terrible damage to the train, shook people. We woke up. We said, what's going on here? As it became fairly obvious that the engineer of the train had a record of alcoholism and of drug use. It became obvious that we all had a stake in drugs in the workplace. Another reason that people have become interested in drugs in the workplace is as a way to get a handle on this country's drug problem.
Because I was using drugs virtually every day and several times a day, to me that became the normal thing. I mean, I had to use drugs to just stay normal. If I didn't have them, I'd go into withdrawal, and then I was really in trouble. And I'd start to shake, and my hair would stand on end, and I'd start to get nauseated, and my nose would start to run. And I was actually, it seems paradoxical, but I was more stable if I had some narcotics in me than if I had none. I'd like to say that I've never been in surgery high, but that would be lying. I don't think I was ever out of control, you know, not knowing what I was cutting, not knowing what I was doing, but I can say with confidence that there were many times I was not performing at my optimum.
Most people who use drugs are workers. There's a misconception that drug use is something that occurs in people who never go to work and live in the ghetto. It certainly occurs there. There's a misconception that this new drug epidemic is a student epidemic. It certainly occurs there. But surveys by the National Institute on Drug Abuse have showed that better than 2/3 of those people who use drugs are employed full-time. A strong message for focusing on the workplace.
name is Butch Jameson. I work here at the government printing office. I'm a truck driver. Be honest with you, I was supposed to be fired from this place 3 weeks after I was working here. I was out there, I was alone. I was very, very scared. Very, very suicidal by this time. The job saved my life, and my co-workers saved my job.
When he worked in our section, we would do his work because he wasn't in no shape to do it. You know, we would just go on to do work, but they really took care of him here.
He come to work so drunk, man. And I think I got tears on my shoulder now where he been crying.
Cash used to babysit me. Ronald Cash used to babysit. I used to cry all over him. I'd get mad and start crying.
And we used to find Butch sometimes. It's a section called Central Receiving. Downtown on the basement floor.
Right.
He'd be hiding behind the pallets or up in them boxes, tore up. We had to go get him.
Go get it.
Drag him
to
the section and pour coffee down. Then sometimes we had to take him home.
My name is Frances Miles, and I'm a machine operator here at GPO. And my relationship with Butch, I always found Butch as a true friend. So I went to him one time, I said, "Butch, are you all right?" He said, "Yeah, I had a few drinks, but I'm all right." But he used to be drunk all the time. All the time. We could never get no work on time because he'd be pushed in a corner somewhere, you know. Always.
By this time, I was living in the street. I was sleeping in the back seat of my car. When I was in here drinking and drugging, I was very dangerous. Even though I worked hard, I was very dangerous because a lot of negative things was going on in my head. And at any time, because I had no control, I might do anything. And you really don't want that kind of person walking around on your job.
He was in bad shape, man.
Then a great thing happened. He met a beautiful young lady.
Mm-hmm.
I met Butch at our work site, and it was around 1978 or 79. We got married March of '82, the first day of spring. He's a lot different to me today at the time that I met him.
I got into counseling in November 1976. I stayed drunk and high the whole month of November because I didn't want to miss Thanksgiving. And Tom kind of knew that too. He talked to me about that all the time. But eventually he got me to see that I had a problem. What's going on, dude? How you doing? Ain't nothing to it. Jameson.
We try to give people like Butch options. I'm Dr. Bill Harris. GPO for federal government and even for private sector was way ahead of the curve as far as providing assistance to employees. As early as about 1971, GPO provided assistance for employees who had alcohol-related problems. Soon after that, probably in 74, 75 or so, that was expanded to include both alcohol as well as drugs. And then in 1985, Employee and Organizational Assistance, which is a broad-based counseling program, came into place.
God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
All right, let's do it.
Let's roll.
That PCP, it's so damn sad. Those dirty needles, they're so damn sad.
I came up with the idea that I got tired of people stereotyping addicts, especially recovering addicts and alcoholics. I felt that it was time that we told our side of the story.
You smoke that crack, and you wish you never had. It's so damn sad.
All right, quiet on the set.
Just smoking and drinking until I fell out. You know, so I think my behavior kind of dictated that I did that in order to...
When I see him on TV, I think about he has really come a long way. Because in the past, if anybody was going to be seen on TV, they'd be seen with the handcuffs on. But this guy is sitting there interviewing different people in the community, and he's doing something positive. am very proud of him. He's really made some advances, and he's very determined. Once he get his hooks into an idea, he try to see it through. And I think that's very good.
I'm not perfect by any long shot, and I'm capable of doing anything now because I think I can think today because I'm sober. But one of the things I try to remind myself is that I like Butch today. Before I didn't like Butch very much. And that's who Butch really is. I look at Butch in the mirror now, and I don't have to shave with my eyes closed. I can really look at me, and I tell myself on a day-to-day basis, man, I like you, man, you're all right.
Butch is not an isolated case. We are very pleased to see how many small employers are really committed to retaining their employees and helping those who have problems. And there are many different kinds of programs that can be offered in large and small businesses that are helping the Butches of the world to overcome those problems. We want to help rehabilitate employees who have problems. It is not productive, either as individuals or as businesses, to punish people for a problem, a disease really, which is what addiction is, that they can't control. And it is not in the best interests of anyone either to basically punish people or throw them out in the streets, fire them, because ultimately that will hurt all of us.
It is horrifying, and it does control your life, and you don't control it ever if you're an alcoholic.
There were people where I worked that could sell cocaine specifically, and if I did not have it, it was easily accessible, definitely.
You know, just from myself being intoxicated, the quality of my work, you know, deteriorated.
I'm Mike. I work as a mechanic, and I have about 4 years clean from alcohol and drugs.
I'm Susan. I have almost 8 years without drugs or alcohol, and I'm in the restaurant business.
I'm Don. I'm a sales associate at a retail chain. I have a year and 2 months sobriety from alcohol. I'm 22 years old.
I'm Chip. I'm 33 years old. I have 6 months clean from cocaine and alcohol, and I'm in the restaurant business.
My name's Beth Kane. I'm the Assistant Director for Clinical Services at Suburban Hospital. And we're here to talk about the issue of alcohol and drugs in the workplace.
I don't know about Susan, the two of us being in the same business, but when I found the restaurant business, I had tried a lot of different computer field and construction work. And I found a field that my addiction and my use of drugs just seemed to go along with the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It went hand in hand, and when it came to owners or management, in that type of business, it was looked upon as pretty much not condoned. I don't want to say that, but
acceptable.
It was acceptable, right? And you could actually, your performance level, I don't think was that much hindered.
So they knew? I mean, they just...
It goes along with the whole lifestyle. You know, there's a restaurant atmosphere lifestyle that it plays a big role in it.
Because you walk out with cash on hand, and most of the management, you know, a lot of people, they go out and drink after work, or they'll stay at the restaurant and drink after work. And I can remember times like seeing my manager so drunk that they couldn't count the money at the end of the night, you know. But and whoever like didn't approve of that, whatever other manager didn't approve of that, they were always covered up for. I mean, we always covered up for each other.
It'd be great if they did encourage more honesty, you know, because it is so prevalent, it is so widespread, you know, to shut their eyes and say, well, nobody ever has that problem. Right, I mean.
When you all were using, before you got into recovery, did you use with coworkers or managers, supervisors?
I did off the job, though. That's how it started. Basically, we would go out.
I did after work, during work, lunch, all the time. For a long time, I didn't think I had a problem. You know, I thought everybody else had a problem. And what you're saying about people in the workplace that have a problem, you know, I know in my shop right now, there's one guy that's a really excellent mechanic, and you know, he's really messing up a lot of the time. And you know, he's actually been offered this option, and he won't take it. You know, I don't.
He's been offered treatment.
Yeah. And you know, so it's like it's down to like the last straw with him right now, and that's how it was for me a lot of times. We work on commission only, and you know, he wouldn't make any money the whole time he's there, and he's, you know, he's scared. He's got a family and stuff.
And they think when they leave for treatment that their job isn't going to be there when they come back, and that sometimes happens.
Well, that's the I think the major feeling is that it's just not being able to go back. I mean, I went into treatment and lost money, sure, but at the point when I came in, it was past even thinking about money. I was just thinking about living. You know, it was bottom line.
I was in a position where I had access to, you know, companies' funds, and, you know, there were times when I dipped into that. I also encouraged other employees on the job, you know, to use. There were mistakes that were made that were costly to the company.
It's important for everyone to understand that small businesses employ more than half of the workforce in this country. And most of these companies have fewer than 10 employees. So that if you have one substance abusing employee in your workplace, it's likely to affect the entire situation.
Green, president of Chamberlain Contractors in Laurel, Maryland. I think it was back in the middle 80s that we became acutely aware of the fact that we had a drug and alcohol problem related to our company. I think the day that it really got out of hand was that we had an operator running a Bobcat and ran into my foreman and broke his leg.
We run some pretty good equipment, some pretty good stuff, pretty good size. We got dump trucks, 65,000 pounds or better, and if that guy's messed up, I don't want him coming on my job.
People tend to think of a drug program as something that you have to institute as a very harsh program right from the start. We established the counseling first, and we got the counselor in, and he really built up a confidence level with the employees, and then we sort of eased into the drug testing program.
I've been here 8 years.
I saw a drastic change in the last year or so. You know, people giving up habits that they had for a long time. And it shows in some of the quality of work that we are now doing.
Last year, I saved in excess of $50,000 just in my insurance costs because I had implemented an EAP program. It's, as I say, it's a profit center for my company. Our annual cost for that program is between $75 and $100 a person, and it's money well spent.
The good news, I think, is that it doesn't cost as much or needn't cost as much as many small business people seem to feel. That in our own organization, we're developing a consortium for small employers, which will gather many different employers together, and therefore we will be able to negotiate for them more affordable prices so that they can offer these programs to their employees.
There are numerous nonprofit organizations that are out there that are designed to help the small businessman, you know, do an evaluation of his business to determine what level of drug and alcohol problems exist and to tailor a program that will suit his needs. It's a business decision, and it is the right decision.
A drug-free workplace program has lots of components. The first thing that a company needs to do is to establish a policy and say, why are we doing this and what's our intent? Parts of that policy should be an educational component. Most workplace policies now have a testing program. It's important that that be well thought through and spelled out to employees. Most of the better workplace programs will have some employee assistance program or some other way of dealing with employees in trouble.
It's really amazing when I go to therapy to see that, like, I'm not the only doctor in town who's had this trouble. I mean, there are just dozens of doctors, lawyers, you name a faction, and you're going to see people who are coming through drug addiction and alcoholism. One of my good friends who treats alcoholism and drug addiction says if he gets on a plane and he sees one of his patients is flying the plane, he doesn't worry because he knows that person is in treatment and that person has had probably drug testing. It's the ones he doesn't know about he worries about.
We don't give them just one alternative, and that's to, you know, terminate them. We allow them the opportunity to deal with the problem that they face and to return as a more effective, productive employee to the company.
They helped me. They helped me when I didn't want it a lot of times. They saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. They saw some potential, because I sure couldn't see it. And they just kept on telling me that I was going to be all right.
They're good workers, you know, but all they need is a second chance. That's all they need.
The people we just met are living examples that something is being done about the problem of alcohol and drug abuse in the workplace, a problem that affects all of us. Joining us here in the studio is a distinguished group with strong opinions about the subject, including business owners, managers, treatment providers, former abusers, and activists, all with a vested interest. Susan?
Billy, you are a recovering addict. Your family's been in business for many years. Did that documentary strike home with you? Were they familiar scenes?
Yeah, it sure did. There were several things.
There's many employees that have problems with alcohol and drugs that are working for you, and you don't really realize it until there's a problem. Like, for instance, in the documentary where the tractor driver ran into the foreman and broke his legs. Also, just many business owners like myself that have drug problems.
How do you know, as a business owner, that your employees are having problems? They could be personal problems, psychological problems. How do you know that they're having drug or alcohol abuse problems?
Well, usually not until an accident happens or unless you ask them. In our company, we started drug testing almost a year ago. And we're trying to keep the people out of our company that do have alcohol and drug problems.
Some people might say that's sort of a cruel stance for someone who has had abuse problems themselves.
Well, we work on cars, and we make our living from that. And we want our customers to know that the people that are working on their cars are alcohol and drug free. We do have people that are already with us in our company that do have problems. We have helped them. We do offer programs through Arlington Hospital and other programs. We want our employees to stay with us that have problems. We really want to try to help them out.
One of the things that we saw a couple of times, in a couple of those examples, were co-workers who covered up for their co-workers who were abusing drugs and alcohol. And I suspect that many people think that that's a noble thing to do. You have another opinion of that.
Well, the inclination for many co-workers is to protect the people that they've grown close to in the workplace. And very often, the common employee doesn't realize that alcohol and drug addiction is a serious disease and the employee has no control over that. Sometimes the employee may look like they have control over it, but what's really happening is just a temporary pulling back on the reins, especially when there's a crisis. Coworkers want to cover up thinking that's the right thing to do, but oftentimes along with that they give some hip shot informal advice that is the wrong advice. And in effect, coworkers will often do the wrong things for the right reasons rather than to take a more constructive approach.
But we don't like people who tell on other people, and someone made the point, we were talking earlier, that sometimes you fear that your coworker may lose his or her job. How do you know what the right thing to do is?
Well, the right thing to do is to look out for oneself in this whole process of understanding addiction in the workplace and its impact on fellow employees. Very often the defenses of rationalizing and denying problems and blaming problems on the environment, people, places, or things is the way the addict escapes responsibility for their behavior or the indirect or direct consequences for their alcohol or drug use. Well, it takes other people around them to buy into that. And the addict or the alcoholic hopes to have people around them buy into that. And so through manipulation, which can be very subtle or very overt, the coworkers are easily led to cover up.
They're, what do you call it in addiction? They are enablers.
They're enablers.
Well, one of the things I think we do need to talk about is how we know that employees have a problem. They could be, as I said before, mental problems. There could be any number of reasons for their problems. As a businessman, at what point do you step in and say something has to be done?
Well, I look at the attendance records, the times they've taken leave without pay, hospital records, things like that. Not hospital records, but the records from the insurance companies for treatments. And you have to observe the employees. I do not do drug testing. I've had employees with problems, with alcoholic problems. I had one employee who was going to Alcoholics Anonymous, signing in every day, bringing a statement back that he was there, but he was still drinking. We didn't know it. I found out when the police department called and said, you can come and get your vehicle. The driver is in jail for driving while intoxicated.
And do you feel as a businessman then that you've blown it as an employee, or do you feel some responsibility to help that person?
I feel a responsibility to help them, but also I have to look out for the company that I run. I have responsibilities there also.
Now, we'll hear a lot today about EAPs, Employee Assistance Programs. I suspect that there are many business people who think that's an expense and a burden that they shouldn't have to bear, that they give you a job, you come do the job, go home, and that's it. Are we going to be seeing many more programs that will help employees on the job, or do you think we're going to enter a period where we're getting more punitive because it's such an overwhelming problem?
Normally what we do during an epidemic like this is we sort of go in both directions at once. We put together a whole lot of programs to identify people with alcohol and drug problems early, and we also try to restrict their access to treatment because the more people you identify, the more expensive it gets. We also have a recession. So to a certain extent, the same businesses that are saying, gee, I'd really like to cut costs by getting people, off the work, so my liability will go down and my insurance policy will go down. I won't have to pay so much for coverage every year. Are the same people who are looking at their benefit payout for health problems going up 20 and 30% every year. And of course, in a recession, everybody looks to tighten the belt. So it's kind of like you got two forces, one economic and well, actually maybe both economic, and they're pushing in opposite directions. And the real victim was a small business owner. It's not so much the Giant or the Bechtel or the Geico. It's the guy with 100 or 200 employees who doesn't get a good break on his insurance policy when he goes to negotiate, and it really has to hire a lot of young people who may bring drug problems into the workplace for them, and really doesn't know what to do, and may also have to comply with a lot of federal drug-free workplace standards that he doesn't really even understand. So it's really tough on the small business owner. That's the one that really gets it in the teeth. Remember, I guess, 80-90% of the people in the country work for businesses of under, 500 employees. So the small business is really the key to the whole drug-free workplace situation, and that's the area that we aren't getting to adequately.
Okay, here's somebody calling my name, but we're going to have to take a short break right here. When we come back, drug testing. Should it be a right or a rule? Few workplace issues have sparked the debate and controversy of drug testing. This is a hot potato among employees and employers searching for answers as the question of productivity clashes with concerns of liability and privacy. Companies don't want to be liable. Employees are concerned about privacy. Drug testing is a hot debate. Peter?
Gene Guerrero is with the ACLU. Gene, you're against random testing. Why is that?
We think any employer has a right and a responsibility to maintain a safe and productive workplace. And we say that if you think an employee is impaired on the job, confront them with it, offer them treatment, fire them if they refuse that treatment, if they don't shape up or ship out. We're for that. If I'm working around a forklift driver in a warehouse, I want to make sure that driver is not impaired. There are all sorts of things that can impair one's performance on the job. Lack of sleep is one. A fight with a spouse. We're not opposed to a company giving somebody a test which actually measures impairment. And there are such tests that are easily available now and can be used for
drugs and alcohol.
Pilots, for anything, whatever it is. Just they're eye-hand coordination tests that actually determine whether or not a pilot is fit to fly. And when I get on that jet, I want to make sure he's fit to fly. I don't care what the reason is particularly. I just want to make sure he's on the ball as he flies. So drug testing doesn't do that. The real object about drug testing was mentioned by one of your speakers in your documentary, and that is to try to do something about the nation's drug problem by having employers play big brother over the private lives of us all. And we think that's a wrong role for an employer to play in a free society.
You probably don't recognize Tom Warner right now without his red cape on, but he's known as the super plumber on television during all your commercials.
I'm just Tom Warner, Dave.
But you do have Warner Plumbing and Electric Company, and Plumbing and Lighting Company, excuse me. And you have looked at the problem of drugs in the workplace. First of all, we heard the problems of trying to do this in a recession. What did it cost you to introduce the program for your employees?
Actually, it didn't cost anything. We started testing pre-employment, and we test employees for cause when they have an accident or injury. And over the last 6 years, we've let several employees go. But it saved us quite a bit. In 1989, it cost us almost $12,000 to do our drug testing program. And the savings on our insurance and training were $385,000 just for that year. So it's very, very beneficial. We started drug testing because I had a few strange situations I didn't understand, and it was my company, my name on the trucks. I felt responsible, and I wanted our employees work by themselves in people's homes and businesses, and I just wanted to ensure that we did everything we could.
Joshua Smith is the Chief Executive Officer of Maxima Corporation. You're the 14th largest African-American company in the United States. You do 35 to 40% of your business for the government, and I guess you're influenced by federal guidelines for drug abuse in the workplace.
Actually, we do about 65 to 70%. There's a law that was passed, it's the Controlled Substance Act, and it requires us to certify that we have a drug-free environment. In that regard, we did three things. We first of all issued a policy. A policy was passed by the Board of Directors. We then issued a memorandum to each employee. We had posters in each of the workplaces around the country. And then we enacted drug assistance programs for employees to make sure that it was part of the benefits. We feel very strongly, we don't random test, but we have a right to test if we see any kind of erratic behavior. And at all of the employee orientation sessions, we make sure that they recognize we are required to certify. Otherwise, we don't get paid by the federal government. And that's a strong incentive.
How does an employer encourage an employee to trust them when they want them to come to them with their problem? For example, a lot of employees obviously would think they may be fired if they had a problem. It would be cheaper for the employee to do that.
If you can develop a culture that says we want to work with you, but a culture that also says we're going to go as far as we can, but if you don't comply, we have to take actions, but we're going to give you a fair chance. That's as far as you can go, because if you go too far, you may incur costs that you can't afford, therefore you're not competitive. You may set the stage, as I think, quite frankly, your documentary does. It says, live happily ever after. I would like to have seen in the documentary, the other side. What happens when you don't? Because when your employees are protecting that individual, as the first segment gives the impression subliminally that that's okay, but that same person probably drove that train that caused hundreds of injuries and deaths. I have a feeling people were protecting them. So you can't go too far on the protection side. Each person has to sign up, take ownership, and take action. And I think the employee has an obligation to work as far as they can in trying to rectify that situation.
Dr. Joseph Autry is with the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Dr. Autry, the level of drug abuse in the workplace, Gene said he didn't think it was incredibly high, but 1 in 5 would seem to be an awfully high figure. Is that an accurate figure?
That depends. If you actually look at drug testing for illicit drugs, it only runs about 11 to 12%, which is still an astonishing figure. If you factor in alcohol, which is the #1 drug of abuse, you could easily double that figure and come up to 20 or 20+%. I think one of the things that we have to realize is that the federal program, which is focused on a drug-free workplace, is focused on illicit drugs. And what we're seeing among employers in this country is a move towards impairment detection and deterrence, which would include getting into alcohol. I think you've also heard that what's important is that you have a comprehensive program, not just drug testing, that you must have a written policy that's binding on both the employer and the employee assistance programs, employee education programs, supervisor training programs, as well as drug testing. That's very key in terms of having a successful program.
As we heard earlier, we're in a recession. You don't need to be told that, but there are exceptional overheads for companies and limited profits right now. How does a company go through the first 3 essential steps of getting an assistance program?
They can do that by several ways. They can talk to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. They can obtain information from our toll-free helpline. They can get information from the National Clearinghouse on alcohol and drug information. They can get information from the Department of Labor, from the Small Business Administration. There are any number of sources of information. We also are in the process of putting together a how-to booklet to help them form consortium among small business so that they can have competitive rates when they try to set up employee assistance programs and drug testing.
Thanks. Susan?
Well, where can you go for help if you're an employer or an employee in trouble? If you're someone who needs answers or you know someone who does, when we come back, some light at the end of the tunnel. Get a paper and pencil and be ready. A little later on, we'll tell you how you can get the help you need.
We've heard a lot about EAPs, Employee Assistance Programs, but only 30% of all employed people in the United States have access to one inside their own companies. On our panel of informed people today, people who know about the problems of drugs in the workplace, are some who've taken various EAP routes, and some who've chosen other ways to address the problem. Susan?
Now, your company did not have an EAP. How did you get in the business of helping your employees?
Well, we first realized that we did have a significant problem. We're in the restaurant industry, and as the documentary said, there is the atmosphere in the industry. First, I began to seek information, written information from government agencies, from hospitals, etc. We started publishing those in our weekly newsletter. We really didn't have any impact, though, or no significant impact, until unfortunately we had a serious problem with a particular employee. Top-notch supervisory line cook. On an evening when we would put out 1,000, 1,500 dinners, never even worked up a sweat on a good night.
So you wanted to help that person. I assume that as a business person it makes a difference. You wanted to help that person.
Good person, didn't want to lose him. But then we paid once every week. Almost invariably, it was a no-call, no-show on that particular evening. Okay, we had gone through the talks. The manager had gone through the verbal warnings, the written warnings. It finally came down to the suspension with the understanding that the only way they could be reinstated was if they sought help. Now, it was put out to that employee. They could seek their own source of help, or they could come to see me, the in-house personnel manager. Began to talk to this employee, and he very quickly was able to open up to us and let us know that he simply couldn't have money. So sure, on that particular night, he didn't come to work because he had hot money in his hands, and he went out and he spent it on drugs.
It's the Friday-Monday syndrome.
Exactly.
You get paid on Friday, you don't show up on Monday.
Exactly. Finally, we set up a savings account that he had ready access to, but his money went directly to that. He decided how much he was going to be given each week of his particular paycheck. I paid his rent, I paid his electricity bill, I got his telephone back for him, etc. When the word began to get out, we have 350 employees during the high time of a year, or the busy season for us. Soon they all knew that they had a way to come for help.
They could trust you.
Exactly.
But it shouldn't be so difficult for employers to figure out how they should start an EAP. I mean, it seems to me that if you are a businessman and you're interested in doing that, that there should be some more readily available information for you.
Well, for myself, our family are Christians. We're a Christian-oriented company, and because of that, not only are we that, we're all ex-alcoholics, and half of us are ex-drug addicts, myself 13 years. And all my people, we have 50 employees, they know of our past experience. Recently, have I met Dan, we have no certain way that we have dealt with drug addicts, alcoholics, just because of my association with AA, NA. I send them to meetings. We have a halfway house in Florida that we support. We send them down there, and they know about these. But to be honest with you, we haven't had but one that has really come around since, applying any of these operations. In other words, we drug test as they come on. If we notice that you have a problem, I can sense it. I'm an expert. It's like, to me, I can smell a drug addict across the aisle here, you see what I'm saying, and what he does. And so I use my own intuition, what the Lord has given me, to deal with these people.
You mentioned, though, relapses, and we really haven't talked about relapses a lot. It would seem that people frequently do not recover, that they have problems, they go into recovery, and then there is a relapse. How do you deal with recurring problems, or do employers just have to get to the point where they say enough is enough, we've offered a program, you've got to go?
Well, I think you've talked about employee assistance programs, and one of the major issues has to be recidivism and whether or not there's a reasonable return on dollars spent for these programs, for whether or not the employees actually benefit and whether or not the organization benefits. And I think you have to look at it from the standpoint that there's a two-part process that you're looking at. One is helping the employee and also making sure that the business continues to be profitable and stable. And I think to the extent that that return isn't there, employers are somewhat hesitant to begin to create EAP programs.
Is the EAP as beneficial for the employer as it is for the employee?
I think absolutely. When you begin to talk about the workforce, then you're talking about the ability to hire good employees that you can count on and depend on. And I think the combination of those shows that that's good for business, and that's what we ought to be trying to do. As a healthcare provider, we have a somewhat unique situation in that rather than doing an EAP program, we have 2 hospitals in our system as well as other healthcare concerns. So we have the ability to make referrals within our system system and out of our system to protect confidentiality for individuals while we do that. So, but we want to measure the return as to whether or not the employee, in fact, is benefiting, and obviously there's a net benefit, therefore, to the corporation for a recovering employee.
Is it good business? Would those employers out there who are watching this program who do not have any sort of EAP, can you wholeheartedly encourage them to have that kind of a program?
Wholeheartedly. This was a long wait for me because I got something good to tell you. I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia, and I run a consortium nonprofit EAP with a membership of about 50 companies and organizations in the Central Virginia area. And we've been around since 1977, mostly serving small business because that's primarily what's in our town. And I'm here to say that it can be done. It can be done without a lot of cost. We have small business as small as 8 to 10 people that are members of our consortium. It costs them $500 a year. They get the EAP assessment, counseling, the training to supervisors, the management consultation, any other topical training that they need, and they use it quite a bit.
So they really shouldn't have to invent their own program as this one company did.
Not when you have a consortium. You can join and use the talents of, we have a staff of 7, and so that small business of 7 or 8 or 100 people has 7 professionals to use, and they feel a part of the community. Our consortium is a private nonprofit with a board of directors who are the business women and businessmen of the community. They're on the board, they're our bosses, and so they have great ownership in the consortium. We feel we were ahead of the game in starting this 15 years ago, and it's worked wonderfully. The community's proud of it. The employers are proud to be a member of it, and it works. There's another one in Nebraska. There's another one modeled after ours in Bermuda, the island.
There are good examples out there.
Wonderful.
And we'll end on that good note. Thank you. Peter?
Thanks, Susan. What you've heard tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. Alcohol and drug abuse raise so many questions, and the answers are far from obvious. We do know, however, that the problem cannot be ignored. The number of hidden abusers in the workplace is alarming, but there are some practical solutions, and more businesses and their partners are committed to bringing help to themselves and their workers.
With substance abuse, everyone loses. The employees, the companies, the American economy, the society as a whole. We hope that something you've seen or heard tonight will strike a chord and encourage you to take action. Now, as we promised earlier, if you have your pencil and paper handy, we leave you with some names and numbers that can be a starting point. Remember to make your workplace a drug-free zone. Good night.
This program is part of the continuing Drug-Free Zones campaign produced by WRC-TV and Blue Cross Blue Shield of the National Capital Area.